Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Julia, Fagi, the Eisner family. I could not begin without a big thank you to Devorah Weiss. Devorah Weiss, raise your hand. Okay. So Devorah Weiss was very instrumental in a lot of the ideas that I'm going to mention tonight. And if anybody is struggling with parenting issues or know somebody who is, you have a resource right here in your midst. She was the first one to start speaking this language of acceptance to me. I do admit I thought she was crazy in the beginning, but I now know that she is a sane voice in the craziness. And I really have so much hakaras hatov to her, so please do consider her a resource. So, how many people in this room are parents? Keep your hand up if you're exhausted. Okay, good. Now, keep your hand up if you have perfect children. Okay, you're lying. Because your wife is not holding her hand up. I know, that's how it is, right? Like, I can't afford Starbucks, my daughter can. Not sure how this works, right? So some husbands have perfect children, their wives do not have perfect children. Not quite sure how that works. So, just to introduce myself, my name is Ruchi Koval. My husband and I are, thank God, the parents of 7 wonderful children. Girl, boy, girl, boy, girl, boy, girl. Very organized. 4 out of the 7, which is 57%, are currently not from. And we have an extremely close, happy household. We love each other. We hang out a lot. We laugh a lot. We spend a lot of time together. Our family is closer and happier than many families I know. I say this not to boast, but because I have so much hakaras hatov for the mentorship and guidance that I have been given. And I would like to share this message with others, which is why I speak about this, which is why I'm here. This happiness, this closeness, this serenity, if you would have told me 5 years ago that I could get up here and even talk about this topic without bursting into tears, I never would have believed you. My emunah has grown stronger. My understanding of what love means has grown stronger. And I feel that there is so much confusion out there about what this parenting journey is really about. And it's such a pity. It's such an unbelievable catalyst for growth, and so many parents are overwhelmed by pain, shame, confusion, and guilt. We're going to start out by talking hashkafa, and then we're going to move on to some practical ideas. We're going to end on a note of chizuk. But if I had to give you one takeaway, I would say this. Acceptance and joy change everything. Acceptance and joy change everything. That is my takeaway. That's what you're going to be hearing me say throughout the evening. So here's what happens. We become parents. I was blessed to become a parent at a young age. I was 20 years old when my first child was born, and pretty much I knew nothing. So you get these kids and you really don't know what you're doing. My generation is the first one to have grown up without the kind of technology that we see, yet we're raising our kids with a different world than what we grew up in. So much of what I did in my early years of parenting, I would reflect back to how my wonderful mother raised us. And I would say, wait, did we do this? Yes, okay, that was normal, that was not normal, right? Sometimes people who grow up in difficult homes, they think back to how they were raised and then they go and try to do the opposite. But either which way, we reflect back on the previous generation and on how we were raised in order to get a baseline for what's normal. But here we are, this generation, that so many of the issues that we're dealing with today didn't exist when we were kids. There is no baseline. There is no precedent. And so we're grasping in the darkness, we're groping for some sanity. There's 1,000 opinions, and they all contradict one another. So what are we supposed to do? Fortunately, we have the Torah as our guide. The Torah tells us something very interesting. There are 7 basic mitos of Hashem that we are supposed to try to emulate. These are the 7 spheros that we focus on during Sfiras HaOmer. I'm just going to focus on the first 2 for right now. The first midah of Hashem that we're supposed to emulate is called chesed. Chesed means kindness. Chesed in the Sphira matrix is parallel to the right hand. The second midah of Hashem that we are supposed to emulate is called Devorah. Devorah, generally translated as strength, more articulately or more specifically translates as restraint, or to use the language of 2018, boundaries. Okay, that refers to the left hand. What does that mean? That means the right hand corresponds to giving, love, acceptance, hugs, kisses, money, food, all the things we give. The left hand is the boundaries. Not right now, not that much, not to you today, not to you from me. We put boundaries around our giving. And that's normal and that's healthy. It's a good midah and it's important to do. Now, with all due respect to the lefties in the crowd, the right hand is considered dominant. Okay? I'm sorry, lefties, you're very special too. So we're supposed to give with the right hand. We're supposed to restrain and boundary with the left hand. What that means is that the midah of giving is always supposed to be stronger and more dominant than the midah of restraint, boundaries, holding back. To what degree or in what ratio is this right hand, left hand boundary supposed to take place? So there's a famous 80-20 rule in parenting. It's so famous that I have no idea where it comes from. I tried to find out, nobody knows. All right, Sarah Hannah Radcliffe popularized it from parenting literature. If you have not heard of Sarah Hannah Radcliffe, she is an unbelievably wise parenting educator. She's a psychologist, and she has a daily parenting post. You can sign up in various ways. And she says, here's the 80-20 rule of parenting. 80% of the communication that you should give to your child should be chesed. I love you, you're so special to me, let's go do something fun today, you look so pretty today, I'm so proud of you, that was a great job you did, right? All the nice compliments that people give. I do have to insert parenthetically that for some reason, and I'm sure for every person it's different, some parents have a really hard time with this 80%. Some parents are not comfortable saying the words, I love you. Perhaps they weren't raised with that being an easy thing to say. Some parents have a hard time hugging, kissing, giving. It's an interesting thing to ponder, but children need it desperately the way they need oxygen and food. 20% of your communication with your child should be Devorah. Now, here's what Devorah does not mean. Who in the world do you think you are? What were you thinking? Everybody else's kid, fill in the blank. Okay? That's not the 20%. Those are mean comments. Those are insults. If you make them sometimes, it's okay, because we're all human. But ideally, the 20% are respectfully worded guidance. Okay? So instead of, I can't believe you left your backpack in the middle of the floor again, right? Not that, but rather, sweetheart, can you pick up your backpack? Now you might say to yourself, well, that's in the 80%. That's so not, I called her sweetheart. But to a child, it sounds like criticism. And it is criticism. You're saying it nicely, but it's criticism. Now, children need kindly worded criticism, because otherwise, how are they going to know what they're doing? Children need to be reminded to do their homework, brush their teeth, fill in the blank, what else? Take a shower, thank you, you must have sons. What?
So I have teenage boys, it's use deodorant. They need to be reminded.
Use deodorant, right? Some kids need to be told to get in the shower, some kids need to be told to get out of the shower, some kids need to be told to get into bed, some kids need to be told to get out of bed. So, right? Some kids need to be told, go play with a friend. Some kids need to be told, can you get home from your friend's house right this second? Okay, there's a million things that we need to teach our kids because we need to teach them values. But that should be 20%. Instruction, teaching should be 20%. And it should be worded respectfully. That's the 80-20 rule of parenting. Now, in adolescence, the ratio changes. In adolescence, we should be giving our kids 90% chesed, 10% gevurah. 90%, I love you, you're awesome, I'm so proud to be your parent. I love walking down the street with you. You're so handsome. You smell amazing. Your hair is so creative. 10% instructions. Sweetheart, can you take a shower? Can you help me clear the table? Did you remember to clean up your room? Can we have a conversation about your new friend? 10%. However, if you have a difficult, challenging, you might even use the word, I don't like this word, rebellious teenager, or young adult, I might add, because teenagehood is being redefined now. Like, I don't think it ends until you're 45 at this point. If you have a particularly difficult, challenging, rebellious child, now how do you know if your kid is difficult, challenging, rebellious? You know. But the way you know is because the 10% stops working. You tell them these things nicely and they totally ignore you. Or then you start getting angry and you start not saying it so nicely, and then they do the opposite of what you said to prove to you that they can. You tell them not to do things they agree with you, you find that they're doing them behind your back. That's how you know. When the 10% stops working. When the 10% stops working, you switch to a new ratio. And the new ratio is 100% chesed, 0% gevurah. That is what is called radical acceptance. Radical acceptance. What that means is fixing, controlling, manipulating my child, which, by the way, we call guidance. We call it chinuch. We call it teaching. But when guiding and chinuch and teaching stops working, it's not guiding, chinuch, and teaching anymore. It's damage. Then you have to switch, and you have to stop doing it, because you stop do what's not working. You stop doing what's not working. So in normal parenting, with normal children, I'm not sure what a normal child is, I'm still looking for one, but in normal parenting with normal children, 80-20. Teenagers, 90-10. Teenagers for whom the 10% stops working, 0-100. That is radical acceptance. And we know this from the Torah. The Torah tells us, "Hocheach tochiach es amisecha, velo tavi alav chit." Everyone says, "Hocheach tochiach es amisecha." Nobody remembers the second half of the pasuk. Hocheach tochiach es amisecha means you have a mitzvah to rebuke another person when they are not going in the right path, when they're not doing the right thing. You have the power to have a positive influence on that person. You have a mitzvah to do so. You have an obligation to do so. But please make sure that you're not making everything worse. Don't bring sin upon them, and don't bring sin upon you. Because if you are giving tochacha to another person in a way that will cause them to do the opposite, to become estranged from you and your values, it is your fault now if things get worse. That's called velo tavi alav chet. The Torah is teaching us when you need to stop teaching, when it makes things worse, when it backfires. And in the parent-child relationship, it is the connection, the relationship, the quality of that bond that makes any positive change possible. Because a child who feels estranged from a parent will do everything they can to live in a way that is the opposite of every value that they stand for. That is how love and acceptance change everything. There's an incredible book written by Madeline Levine. It's called The Price of Privilege. a very sobering, gritty book about kids who grow up in privileged homes and why so many of them seem to suffer from so much anxiety, depression, cutting, eating disorders. This is a quote from the book. Adolescents need tremendous support as they go about the task of figuring out their identities, their future selves. Too often what they get is intrusion. Intrusion and support are two fundamentally different processes. Support is about the needs of the child. Intrusion is about the needs of the parent. So when we are being hochiach, our children, we're teaching them what to do and how to behave. We have to undergo a pretty serious cheshbon hanefesh, pretty serious critical self-analysis, and ask ourselves, who is this really about? Is this about my child's future? Or is this about me, my fear, my panic, my embarrassment, my guilt? Because if it's about you, you cannot do what's right for your child. You have to get yourself out of the way. And so what good parents do, and we do this because we love our children so much, we intrude, we get in the way, we insert ourselves where we don't belong, and we make everything worse because we care about them so much, because we love them so much, because their futures are so fundamentally important to us. And in that way, we really do. Good parents everywhere are making these mistakes. We really just make everything worse. What is the purpose of parenting? So I ask groups all over, why did you become a parent? Most of the groups I speak to are not from. And when I say to them, why did you become a parent? I get very interesting answers. I get, because that was the next logical step. Because my friends were becoming parents, right? So here you are, a from audience. How would you answer the question? Why did you become a parent?
God told us to. God told us to?
God told us to. Anything else?
Continuity.
Continuity of?
Humanity, that people need.
Propagation of the species. Okay, that's a good answer.
Looking to give to someone else besides your spouse.
Looking to become a giver. I know spouses are too high maintenance. Let's have some kids. Yeah?
I love my family and what I saw in my family, traditions and the different holidays and Shabbos, and I wanted to be able to.
So wanting to transmit our values and our tradition that we grew up with and pass that along to the next generation. Okay, I think all these, yes, did I paraphrase correctly? I think all these answers have validity. The Torah tells us why we should have children. Pru, urvu, umilu es haaretz. Be fruitful and multiply and fill up the earth. Similar to what you said, and in terms of being a giver, is that we, as Jews, are the Am HaNivchar. We are the chosen people. What does that mean? We're not just chosen for matzo balls and gefilte fish. You know, I love when you go to like some out-of-town community and there's like a kosher aisle in the grocery store. What do they have? Matzah. Seriously? This is the best we have to offer? Grape juice? Woohoo! Chosen people. I'm so flattered. Okay? What does it mean to be the chosen people? It means that we are the leaders and teachers of humanity. We are the leaders and teachers of humanity. We are chosen not for privilege, but for responsibility. What that means is that the reason we should have children is to pass along our values to the next generation. Because we will not live forever, and we want to lead in this world good people with good values to continue to teach the world the values of the Torah. So, if we have children to transmit values, what happens if those children don't transmit those values? That's when we start to panic. But we make a fundamental mistake, because this gentleman here talked about becoming a giver, that we are looking to give to somebody. And the truth is that the parenting journey is not about the product. It's about the process. We might say, well, why did I have children? I had children so they could go to seminary and go to yeshiva and wear yarmulkes and, get married and, do the things that children are supposed to do. But then what happens if those children don't go to seminary? What happens if they get kicked out of seminary? I may be speaking autobiographically here. I may not. I'll never tell. What happens if they get kicked out of yeshiva and they stop wearing their yarmulke and they start doing all the things we taught them not to do? Does that mean we're a failure as parents? No, because the parenting journey is not about the product. Nothing is guaranteed. There are some people who follow recipes. I consider recipes like a suggestion, Then I kind of improvise from there. So my food turns out very interesting, okay? But there are people who follow recipes, even two people who follow the identical recipe, the food will still come out a little bit different. Children are much less predictable than recipes. You know why? So I learned this when we got a dog. We got a dog a couple years ago. My life was too boring, so we got a 68-pound golden doodle. Well, he wasn't 68 pounds then. He was 10 pounds then, but now he's 68 pounds. He's my best listener, Baruch Hashem. So we took the dog to a trainer to be professionally trained because neither my husband and I had any idea what we were doing with the dog. We were like these two FFBs who were scared of dogs. That stereotype? That was us. I'm like, a dog. So we got a professional trainer. And the trainer told us, oh, this is a very good breed. I said, why? He goes, they're very smart. They're very smart, I'm used to my Jewish mother and my Jewish mother-in-law always telling me my kids are very smart. They're like 1 day old. And my mother's like, she's very smart. I can tell. Okay, so I'm used to this. So the trainer tells me that my dog is very smart. I'm like, Baruch Hashem, Yiddish Nachas, okay? So he says, smart dogs are very easy to train. Why? Because they learn pretty quickly that if you do this, you'll get a reward. If you do this, you get a punishment. That's a smart dog. Easy to train. However, here's what the trainer didn't tell me. I figured this out myself. Smart kids are very hard to train. I will tell you a story about one of my very smart kids who was smart at 1 day old. This kid was 2.5 years old when her baby brother was born. Of course, she hated him. So what did she used to do? She used to pinch him so he would cry. That made her happy, okay? So I told her, sweetheart, in my perfect 20% voice, sweetheart, if you pinch him again, you're gonna have to go into the corner. So she thought about this, and she considered her options, came to the conclusion that this was totally worth it, walked over to him, gave him a good gesunte pinch. He starts howling. She marches herself into timeout, and called it a day. Smart kids are very hard to train. We used to call her the unbribable one. At school they made this like Pirkei Avos contest. They make these contests. Like, if you learn Pirkei Avos every day, at the end of the year, you get to go to the park. So she thinks about this. Okay, she's in like 2nd grade. She's like, 1 second. How many hours am I going to spend doing Pirkei Avos? I'm like, I don't know. None of my other kids ask me this. How many hours am I going to be in the park? I'm like, 2? Not worth it. The unbribable one. Kids are not recipes. What you put into one, you'll get a totally different product than what you put into the other. But it's not about the product. What is parenting really about? If you look at our avos and imahos, they have a really mixed bag of products, right? As difficult as anybody's parenting journey might be, I don't know that one of your kids tried to kill the other. I don't know that any of your kids have sold a sibling into slavery. They may have threatened. They may have tried. But it didn't happen. Think about Yaakov and Esav. Think about Avshalom. Think about Cain and Hevel. There are some pretty hair-raising stories in the Torah. If parenting were about the product, who are we learning from? Because it's not about the product, and it has never been about the product. It's about the process. What does that mean? What that means is that the Torah teaches us something extremely powerful. And I heard this myself with my own ears from an extremely special individual, one of the team of people who keeps me sane. His name is Rav Elia Brodny. Some of you may have heard of him. He's an unbelievable advocate for kids at risk, as they're called. Kids in pain is how I prefer to refer to them. And he says this. My husband and I went to speak to him once. His daughter lives, he's a very, very tremendous Talmud Chacham, and he came to Cleveland. His daughter lives in Cleveland. And my husband and I made an appointment to speak with him because we know that he deals with the OTD community, the Off the Derech community. So we went to speak to him. This was about 3 years ago. So we sat down, I opened my mouth, I started crying. That was like phase one of our conversation. And we started pouring out our heart to him and telling him some of the things that had been going on. And we have a child who's autistic, and we have all kinds of things. And he said to us the following, I will never forget his words. You seem like very nice people. Like, we're kind of normal. I know our life sounds super dysfunctional, but we're kind of normal people. We're good people. He says, let me tell you something. Your children's neshamos needed to come into this world. Some neshamos, some souls, have to travel a difficult, circuitous, pain-filled, complex journey on this planet. And Hashem sent 4 of those neshamos into your family. And when Hashem was searching for the right people to love these kids, to hug them, to hold them, to accept them, to give them the space they needed to figure out their stuff, who would overcome their own pain to focus on the pain of their children, he chose you. So I cried some more. But it's true. One cannot deny the fact that having children with challenges, be they physical, be they spiritual, academic, mental, emotional, it doesn't matter what kind, will transform you, hopefully for the better, if you really try your hardest to find the right mentors, the right peer support, to keep your emunah strong, which we'll talk about more later, totally transforms you as a human being. You become more kind, you become less judgmental, you become more patient, you develop wellsprings of love that you didn't even know you had, you discover wellsprings of generosity that you didn't even know were possible. And I can tell you today, 5 years ago, where are we, 2018? 5 years ago, before any of this started hatching, I was not the same person that I am today. And while I would certainly wish I could take my children's pain away, for myself, I do not wish away the journey. Because I like who I am today 1,000 times better than who I was 5 years ago. 5 years ago, I didn't get it. I thought I knew what love was, but I wasn't challenged. I thought I was a good parent, but it wasn't really tapped. And I am really grateful, something I never thought I would say, not because of the product. There is no product. A person evolves until 120. When are we really done growing? We're not done growing. I was talking to my 8-year-old daughter today. She asked me, Mommy, what is therapy? She said, I bought a coloring book for my daughter. It said, coloring therapy. I didn't know she saw it. She said, Mommy, what is therapy? So I started talking to her about doctors who talk to you. She goes, no, Mommy, what is coloring therapy? I'm like, oh, that was an easy question. I said, therapy is something that makes you feel better. I said, some people feel better by talking. Some people feel better by coloring. I said, I feel better from yoga. She says, I don't think those things make me feel better. I said, you're 8, so you're still learning about yourself. I said, I'm 43, and I'm still learning about myself. I said, we don't ever stop learning about ourselves. We should always keep learning about ourselves. So she's still marinating on that, probably. But truly, we are never done growing. And the challenges, if we're dealing with kids with challenges, it is a tremendously transformative experience, one that I can say today that I am grateful for. So if anybody thinks that parenting is about the product, I'm not a good parent this, I'm not a good parent that, that has nothing to do with it. That means that our avos and imahos were chas v'shalom, terrible parents. How can that be? What it means is, how are we utilizing the process? Are we becoming more humble? Are we becoming more kind, more understanding, less judgmental? If we are, we're amazing parents. And if we're not, it means we've got some work to do. So that is really the purpose of parenting from a Torah perspective. The most beautiful example I can think of about how this process looks like, when I say love and acceptance changes everything, that it is the power of the relationship that transforms this parenting journey. When a parent tries to control their child, tries to make them do certain things, tries to come down hard on them, give them tough love, tough rules, confiscating consequences, that only leads to estrangement and making everything worse. The most beautiful example I can think of is Yaakov Avinu and his son Yosef. Everybody knew that Yaakov loved Yosef. Some of the commentaries actually take Yaakov to task for showing favoritism to Yosef, but everybody knew that Yaakov loved Yosef. Now what happened to Yosef? 17 years old. Torah says he's a good-looking young man, stands in the mirror, he likes to curl his hair. His brothers get jealous of him, they sell him into slavery. He ends up in Mitzrayim, alone and estranged. And then Potiphar's wife sets his eyes on him, and she wants to be with him. It is almost impossible to conceptualize the depth of this test of Yosef. As far as he is concerned, his family cast him out. They have no need for him. He's young, alone, and impressionable. There was no internet, there was no Facebook, there was no Instagram. Nobody would know. And he resisted. How did he resist? The Torah uses a certain trup, a very unusual trup, a shalsheles. Only a few times this trup appears in the Torah. It's when a word is dragged out over and over to always imply hesitation. Yosef, who would come to be called Yosef HaTzadik because he overcame this test, hesitated. He hesitated. This test wasn't a no-brainer. It was hard for him. That's why it earned him HaTzadik. Think about how he felt. A 17-year-old boy cast away by his own family as though he didn't matter, as though he were the black sheep. He was off the derech. He was, as one of my children once said, a black stain on the family. And he hesitated. At the last minute, what saved him? The Torah tells us, Demus diyukno shel aviv. He envisioned the face of his father. I am the son of my father, and he loves me, and he's proud of me, and he will always have my back. Can't do this. It was the sheer power of the force of the relationship that kept Yosef on the derech. Unbelievable. Yaakov never yelled at him. He never said, "Don't you dare, in our family, we don't do this. We don't do that. I don't care what all your friends are doing." Didn't say that. Sheer love was the glue that kept Yosef connected to the tradition of his father Yaakov. That is the most beautiful example of how love and acceptance change everything. So this was all theoretical. This is all hashkafa. Now we're going to get a little practical. We're going to talk about 7 mistakes that good parents make. And the reason good parents make these mistakes is because they so deeply care about their kids. They also care about themselves. We'll get there in a minute. They want their kids so badly to turn out right. Now, there's unique challenges. If somebody grew up frum and they have a big frum family, then this is very embarrassing. This is the only cousin who fill in the blank. This is the only one. We're 1,000 generations from Lithuania. I don't know. You know, it's like a tall order for these kids. If a person became frum of their own volition, that carries its own challenges. I worked so hard to become frum so my kid could reject it. And now my parents, my sister, they think I'm a failure. They think they were right all along. It doesn't matter where your background is. It carries its own unique brand of shame and stigma. And good parents, with all of this pain and shame, make 7 common mistakes. Mistake number 1 is control. I feel scared. I don't know where this is going. My kids started breaking the rules, skipping school, short skirt, no yarmulke, jeans, no hat, black hat, used to be a hat, I don't know, whatever is your minhag. And I remember with one of my kids, it was wearing a red sweatshirt on Shabbos. That was like the thing that made us see red, so to speak, right? Now I look back and I'm like, I would love that red sweatshirt back. So they start seeing signs and they start to get scared. So what do? They respond with control. You can't wear that. And then they like hide the red sweatshirt, you know, where you like wash it and forget to dry it and it goes in a garbage bag and you give it away, you know? You hide the iPod, you hide the DVD, you delete the history, whatever it is, control, control, control. Why do good parents control? Because they're trying to make things better. What are they actually doing? They make things worse. So I don't know if you have noticed, but people, particularly adolescents, particularly difficult or challenged adolescents, never respond well to control. Mom, has anybody seen my red sweatshirt? No, I don't know where it is. Wow, I'm so happy it disappeared. It was so unshabbistic. It's so good that I'm not going to have that nisayon anymore. Thank you, Mommy. No, that never happens. Kids respond to control with anger, with more rebellion, with a renewed resolve to sneak around behind your back and do it anyway, with buying a neon sweatshirt just to make you mad, and wearing it not just on Shabbos, but on Yom Kippur. I'll show you. That's what control gets you. Control doesn't work. And parents control out of fear. Parenting out of fear is always a bad idea. It will always guide you wrong. The second common mistake that parents make is fear. What are we afraid of? I'll tell you what I was afraid of. I was afraid of my kids going off the derech. Well, not afraid of that anymore. But a lot of parents are afraid. And when we're afraid, we cannot be rational. Fear is an extremely powerful emotion. Fear is what propels almost all racism, arguments, angry, mean words. At the bottom of almost all of that is fear. What are we afraid of? Are we afraid of what the neighbors will say? We can be honest about that. Are we afraid that Hashem is angry at us? We're going to get to that. But if a parent can be honest with themselves and recognize that at the root of whatever I'm doing is fear, please understand that that is not going to guide me in the right direction. There is nothing to be afraid of, although it is the most normal human emotion, but so much of it is manufactured in our own heads. If this, then that. If this, then that. So much of that is the Yetzer Hara, planting paranoia in our heads because it will get us to do so many negative things in our relationships, saying things we shouldn't say. We think we can control our kids with fear. Oh, my kid's going to Israel. Who knows what they're going to do? You think you can stop any of that with your fear? There was once this celebrity on a plane, and she gets off the plane, and her publicist, everybody says, "How was your flight?" She says, "Terrible. I'm so exhausted. My worrying kept that plane in the air the whole time." We think that by worrying, we're going to stop some kind of outcome. I have some good and bad news for you. The outcome is going to happen anyway. Your fear is not going to prevent any of that from happening. So check your fear and ask yourself, if you're parenting out of fear, make sure that you can think rationally, because fear never guides us into rational choices. Number 3 is shame. What will the neighbors say? What are people going to think of me? What are people going to think of us? What will my mother say? What will my grandmother say? What will the principal say? What will the teacher say? With the exception of my mother, I don't care about any of those people. I care about my kid. Because my kid needs me. My kid needs me to be an advocate, a cheerleader, and a support. And if there's a teacher who thinks I'm a bad parent, that's okay with me. Because that teacher is okay. I'm not worried about that teacher. I am worried about my kid. I'm not worried about this person in the community who might think I'm a bad parent. That's okay. That I have learned. This has not been an easy process. But I have learned, why do I care what these random strangers think about me? Why? I have to make sure that my child feels safe with me, feels supported by me, understands that there is nothing they can do that will ever make me stop loving them. Understand that I am proud to walk down the street next to them, no matter what they're wearing, no matter what's on their head, no matter what. No matter what. That's what's important to me. I care what Hashem thinks of me. I care what my spouse thinks of me. I don't care what all these random people think of me. And a corollary to shame is my next one, shidduchim. Shidduchim. Now, I can't speak to shidduchim because the bottom line is that I don't have any married children yet. Maybe that's why. It doesn't matter. You know why? Think about all the crazy things we do to get our kids married. You have to wear this, you have to wear that, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to say this, you have to say that, you have to have a resume, you have to have this picture, and a full body picture, and a profile picture, and a front picture, and a I don't know what else kind of picture. Oh, pictures aren't sneeze, I forgot. You know who makes shidduchim? Hashem. Hashem has a shidduch for my child. And if Elia Brudney is right, and I'm putting my bets on him, that Hashem put these neshamos in the world for a reason. Hashem chose me and my husband to be their safety net, to be their cheerleaders, to give them hugs every single night and tell them, you will always have a place in our family. We love you no matter what. We are honored, privileged, lucky to be your parents, every single one of you, no matter what. That same Hashem provided a spouse for my children. And you can't go down the road of fear. It doesn't matter what is going on in this world. Hashem knew about all of that when a bas kol went out from heaven 40 days before conception. The bas kol did not say, bas ploni ploni, except if their kids act up. Then, the deal's off. That is not what the bas kol said. The bas kol said, bas ploni ploni, no matter what. Nobody can interfere with hashgacha pratis. Nobody can get in the way of the plan that Hashem set forth for my family. And if this nisayon has transformed my family in such an unbelievable way, that through this process of acceptance and love, our family, which with such diverse range of types and observances, if there isn't a spouse in this world who can't appreciate that, that means you're saying there's no Hashem in this world. And that's not possible. The same Hashem who gave us this challenge is the same Hashem who picked out the perfect spouse for each one of my children. And this nisayon has transformed my kids too. They're not the same children. Each one of them from their own unique perspective. They have learned what love really means. They have learned what acceptance really means. They have learned Ezahu Chacham Halomed Mikal Adam, who is wise, he who learns from everyone. Those are not just pretty words in Perikei Avos. Those are truth. And there is a spouse in this world who's going to consider that a maila. So using shidduchim as an excuse to control and manage our children in a way that is damaging is just a lack of emunah. Number 5, despair. Yush, one of the best tools of the Yetzer Hara, is to get us to give up and to say, there's no way, this can never get better. Nobody can help me. Nobody understands me. How can this ever improve? Understandable feelings, and feelings that have to be experienced, but feelings that have to then be overcome. Because despair gets us nowhere. There are days when people in their difficult parenting journey want to get under the covers and never come out, I've been told. Understandable. But we cannot give up. We cannot give up. It goes back to Emunah. There's a Hashem in this world. And you know how they say Hashem doesn't give you anything you can't handle? I'm going to amend that. Because actually, Hashem does give you things you can't handle. But then you grow. And all of a sudden, or not all of a sudden, gradually, you become a different person. And you look back and you say, I handled that. I handled that. And maybe I fell down the well of despair, but then I got out. Wow, I'm not the same person. So no, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, I couldn't handle this. But now I can. That means that Hashem grew me by giving me things I couldn't handle, and then I handled them. So we cannot despair. We cannot fall prey to Yush. Number 6 is guilt. It's all my fault. I should have put them in more frum schools. I should have put them in less frum schools. We should never have moved. I shouldn't be working so much. I should be working more and making more money. We should have spent more money on the kids. We shouldn't have spoiled them so much. You see how all these things contradict each other? That's another tool of the Yetzer Hara. Guilt. It's my fault. In our case, we're in Kiruv. There are some very well-meaning people who implied that our Kiruv work was damaging to our children because we allowed non-frum people in the house. I don't believe that, but then I did. Hashem's not proud of me. I didn't insulate my home from negative influences. That's a tool of the Yetzer Hara. That's guilt. Did every single person in this room make parenting mistakes? Yeah. That's called being a parent. You don't get to be a parent without making mistakes. Sorry if you thought you were immune. But what do we need to do? We need to learn from our mistakes. We need to grow from our mistakes. But one of the most powerful mantras that has got me through this journey is, I did the best I could with the tools I had. When I think back, I think maybe it's because I was so young when I had kids, I didn't know what I was doing. And then I hear friends of mine who got married later in life said, it's my fault, I'm too old and tired. Should have had them sooner. Sometimes we don't have control over when we have our children. But we were well-meaning, and we tried our best. And we asked us Torah, and we spoke to therapists. We did all those things. Sometimes you get bad advice. Sometimes all the facts are known. Sometimes you just don't have enough understanding to frame the question. But Hashem doesn't hate me. Hashem loves me. Ahava rabba ahavtanu. Hashem loves us so much. Hashem didn't put me in a situation to trip me up and make me fail. That's not what Hashem is about. Hashem's not on the other team. Hashem is on my team. Hashem is my quarterback. So he wasn't trying to trip me up. I did the best I could with the tools I had. I know more today because I'm not the same person. That's a good sign. That means I've become a different person over the years. I should hope I'm not the same person at 43 as I was at 23. That would be really depressing. Not because I wasn't a good person, because it means I haven't grown at all. So if you can look back and say, I should have done things differently, maybe not. But it doesn't matter. Chances were you were using the best tools you had at the moment. So when we beat ourselves up, and our Rav, Baruch Hirschfeld in Cleveland, told us this, a very holy person. He said, stop thinking that Hashem is punishing you. It's not going to take you anywhere good. It's going to make you feel discouraged. It's going to make you feel depressed. And it's going to alienate you from Hashem. Don't think that. Hashem loves me, and he's giving me challenges because he wants me to grow. So, the 7th mistake that good people make, that good parents make, is they're very concerned about the siblings. What if I have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 challenging children, and I treat them with love and acceptance, and I allow them to make their mistakes, I allow them to live their journey, I let them know that I will never give up on them? Won't all my siblings want to be that way? The answer is no. A child does not wake up one morning and say, hey, I think I'll be dysfunctional today. I think I'll fail all my classes and sleep through class and get everybody mad at me and alienate all my friends and have no place in the community. That's a good idea. I'll do that. And we'll get to this a little bit later, but children act that way for a reason. One of the things I always tell my kids is fair does not mean same. Think about how Hashem treats us. Look around the room. Did Hashem make us all the same? No. We don't all look the same. We don't all have the same IQ. You may have noticed we don't all have the same bank account. Why does Hashem treat us all differently? Because each of us needs something different. Because each of us has a unique tafkid in this world. And Hashem gives us the tools we need to fulfill our tafkid. Imagine if Hashem would make us all the same. Did anybody read A Wrinkle in Time? You remember that town, Kamazatz, where all the kids were playing ball at exactly the same time, and all the mothers all called in the kids for dinner. It was the creepiest thing. That's not how Hashem makes his world. Everybody's different because everybody needs something different. We are supposed to emulate Hashem in our parenting journey. Why would we treat all our kids the same? We give our kids different medication. At least I do. We give our kids different words. We put our kids in different schools. One memorable year, I had kids in 4 different schools. Because I love them. Because I am committed to giving each child what they need. And it's true, just like when you have a special need, I learned this in my autism journey, the siblings who do not have special needs need to be attended to make sure that they're not being overlooked, to make sure they're not being taken for granted. But they do not need the same thing as the special needs child. They need their own attention, their own connection, their own love. So too in the parenting journey. Of course, you can't forget about your easy kids, whatever those might be like. But you do not fall into the trap of treating everyone the same. That is not how Hashem runs the world. And that's not how functional families look. Okay, I'm going to conclude with 5 practical questions that you can ask yourself in your parenting journey to figure out how to behave or how to react. Question number 1, is it working? So this is something that really smart parents do, and I did it myself for a long time. You try a technique, right? Like, get out of bed, right? That's a technique. Get out of bed. Now, get out of bed is an amazingly ineffective technique, particularly for teenage boys. So I would try this technique, it wouldn't work. So what would I do next? I would do it louder, and then the emotionality would rise. Now, it didn't ever work, but I kept doing it over and over again. But here's where some parents make the mistake. Is it working doesn't just mean is the technique failing. Sometimes you can guilt or bribe or control or cajole your child into compliance, but you are burning out the relationship. What that means is that you are winning the battle, but you are losing the war. You are not teaching your children values. You are not teaching them anything. You are teaching them that you do not understand them, that you do not care about them, that you do not hear them, that you don't understand their struggle, and they're also not going to have any long-term gain from this technique. So sometimes parents feel like, well, it's working. Working doesn't just mean compliance. Working means, are you burning out the relationship? Because if you think of Yosef HaTzadik, what kept him going in the long run? It was his level of connection to his father. My father understands me. My father loves me. My father will never give up on me. My father has my back. And that's the last question, which we're going to talk about. So question number 1, is it working? It is amazing how often we use techniques that are not working. Why? Because we don't know what else to do. So we keep doing the same thing over and over, and louder, and it's not working. Number 2, what are my options? If you are trying to control your child to not do a particular thing, and they're going to do it anyway, but they'll do it behind your back, they'll do it at their friend's house, they'll do it at the park, they'll do it when you're out of town, then you do not have an option of managing and controlling that behavior. That is not an option. So what are your options? I don't know what your options are because I'm not in your family. That's a question you have to answer. But if your child is going to do that thing anyway, then forbidding it is not an option. Now, I'm going to give you an example, okay? One of my children, who is not a difficult child, so this is the like 90-10 kind of child, right? So this child doesn't like to clear the table. That's understandable. Nobody likes to clear the table. I don't like to clear the table. And so this kid was very busy with her friends and didn't want to clear the table. I didn't say anything in the moment, didn't want to embarrass my child in front of her friends. Later that night, called her over. We had a 10% conversation about clearing the table and being a little self-centered with wanting to be with friends and not pitching in the family. Polite, warm, friendly, loving. The kid was annoyed, right? No kid wants to hear that. Little eye rolling may have ensued. The next day, this kid came over to me and said, Mommy, you know, I've been thinking about what you said, and you're right. And I'm going to try to be better about that. That's what we call, it's working. You have a conversation. The kid might be a little ticked off. That's normal. There might be some eye rolling involved. That's normal. But then it's working in the long term. Our relationship is just as close, maybe even closer. And the child has had a value more strongly ingrained in their psyche. That's what a technique working looks like. It doesn't mean that they're not going to be irritated in the short term. The question is what's happening in the long term. That's an option. But if that's not going to work for that kid, that's not an option. Number 3 is, am I winning the battle and losing the war? Sometimes we feel so good because we stamped out a certain behavior in the here and now. But down the line, nothing has changed. Or things are continuing to decline or spiral out of control. You have to think about this as a long-term strategy. The ultimate goal is, again, it's not about the product, it's about the process. And ultimately, it's about the quality of the relationship between parent and child. And Yaakov Avinu is our example here. That's the war. The war is to stay close and to stay connected with our kids as much as possible so that our values actually matter to them. So they care about our values. So they want to be like us because they respect us and because they love us. And they want to please us and they want to feel connected to us. I can't read my hand. Oh, the fourth question we have to ask ourselves, why is my child acting this way? You know, sometimes we say, well, they're making a choice. He's making a choice to wear a red sweatshirt on Shabbos. You know, every kid, believe it or not, has a reason for doing what they do. If your kid does not want to get out of bed in the morning and go to a minyan, there's a reason. And it's not just laziness. Because all teenage boys don't like to get out of bed in the morning, yet many of them are in shul. I know, I saw them. I saw them walking. Why is my child not getting out of bed in the morning? I don't know, but I can promise you that there's a reason. And that reason is a good one. And just because you don't have access to the reason doesn't mean it doesn't exist, doesn't mean it's not important, doesn't mean it's not valid, doesn't mean it's not a huge part of your child's reality. And if you don't know what it is, it just means that you don't know your kid well enough. There is a reason. If your kid is dropping out of school, or breaking halacha, or making bad friends, or making poor choices, or acting stranger than usual, there is a reason. And just because you don't know what that reason is, doesn't mean it doesn't matter. These kids are still developing. Their prefrontal cortex doesn't finish developing until they're in their mid-20s. These are not choices, like the way we decide sugar or sweetener. Sometimes we say, well, they made their choice. So much of the time, it's coming from a deep emotional place that we simply don't have access to. We need to respect that about our kids. And if they're doing it to make us mad, there's a reason for that too. It's because we gave them a reason to want to make us mad. And that is a sign that we have not been understanding or accepting enough. And finally, the most important question to ask ourselves, What is my level of connection to this child? What is the quality of our emotional closeness? And believe it or not, that is in our hands. I once had one of my kids program his or her phone to hate text me, I hate you, 1,000 times in a row. A very techie kid. That was 3 years ago. This is a child that now gives me hugs, kisses, I love you, you're the best mother in the world, I can tell you anything, I know exactly what this kid is up to all the time. Why? What changed? Me. I changed. And I decided that my level of connection with this kid was more important than anything in the world. And I made the change with very important mentorship and guidance to say, if our relationship is broken, it is my responsibility as the grown-up to fix it. And if you want to know how to do that, talk to Devorah Weiss. Okay, I want to conclude with 2 things that you need to do for yourself in this parenting journey, because this parenting journey is a very selfless one. From the moment we become parents, before we became parents, whether it's pregnancy or whether it's an adoption, those months of waiting and anticipating and getting ready to have this child, that's the moment that selflessness begins. And being a primary caregiver to a struggling child can be emotionally and physically exhausting. Remember, I asked you, if you're exhausted, keep up your hand. And almost everybody here did. So we have to take care of ourselves. And that's something I learned from some amazing ladies in this room. If you do not take care of yourself, you cannot take care of anyone else. And I will say that women are much more likely to seek support for this than men. So for the men in the room, kol hakavod that you're here. Honestly, it's an amazing, amazing thing. But we have to take care of ourselves. Self-care on a physical level, on an emotional level, and on a spiritual level is not a luxury. You have to make time for friendships. You have to make time to seek support from other people. You have to make time to find people who are going through what you're going through so you can support one another. You have to develop your sense of humor. Every now and then you gotta look around and say, this is kind of funny. This is really kind of funny. Sometimes I look around, my kids bring all their friends over. They all sit around in the backyard, and I sometimes look around and I'm like, Hashem, you are so funny. You're funny, Hashem. This is great. And my husband and I have gotten to the point where we can catch each other's eye and just laugh. It's great. We're so lucky, but it's funny. For me, it's yoga. For me, it's making time to eat healthy food that makes me feel good. Sometimes unhealthy food. Sometimes unhealthy food really makes me feel good, and I'll do that too. Making time for friendships. Making time to talk to Hashem. I go in my backyard and I talk to Hashem. I'm like a Hasidista. I'm really not, but I like to pull from all modalities. And Emunah, your Emunah really takes a beating sometimes in this journey. You have to rediscover your relationship with Hashem. And a lot of that is reminding you, Hashem is my quarterback. Hashem is on my team. Hashem loves me. Hashem's proud of me. Hashem is cheering me on. Hashem gave me these souls. He's so proud of me. Look at me. I'm still getting up every morning and giving every person in my life what they need. And some days I don't give everybody what they need because I'm only human, and that's okay too, and I can forgive myself for that and move on. So self-care and Emunah are like the 2 twin pillars that keep this whole thing going. I want to give every person sitting here a bracha. May your parenting journey deepen who you are as a human being. May you remember that love and acceptance change everything. May you remember that it is not about the product, it is about the process. And may your connection and love to your children be paralleled only by the relationship of Hashem, our ultimate parent, to us, as He showers us with unconditional love and acceptance. He says to us, B'ni b'chori Yisrael, you are my children. I love you. I will always love you. Yisrael, afal pi shechata Yisrael, who there's nothing you can ever do, Hashem tells us, that will make me stop loving you. May we all rise to that level of total love, and may it transform us as human beings. Thank you for listening.